Hi, I'm Leonie West from Westalee Design, and I'm going to show you how we use our clamshell. I'm going to use the 1.5 by 3 inch clamshell. We have a line marked here and here. This line we need to line up with our stitching here, and this line we will line up across here. We need to be on that stitching line going down here. We're going to sew around the clamshell, making sure that we keep our ruler foot in contact with that clamshell edge as we go around. We're going to stop when we get to our stitching line across the base, and then we're going to come up and sew the next clamshell. If you were doing a lot of clamshells, you would just move the template down and continue sewing your clamshells, keeping this line in place. We're going to have to sew along the edge of here. You may wish to use one of your straight rulers to sew along that edge, and we're going to stop sewing so that we can move our clamshell. I'm just going to turn this around for you. We're going to want the clamshell to come up so that this part of the clamshell is up around here. This line is in place here, so I'm going to turn it at an angle just to make that easier for you to see. I've got to continue sewing up the edge. Having my clamshell come up here, in line with here, this line in line with the one we sewed before. They give us a guideline to keep our clamshells running straight, and we want the line across here to be in line with the top of each of our clamshells. So I'm also using the line across the bottom to help give me that reference. Use as many guidelines as you can when you're sewing. The more reference lines and guidelines you have, the more accurate your quilting will be. So we're going to come around here. We're going to sew down and stop when we get to that stitch line. We're going to sew up. Coming around back to that stitch line again. When we get down to the stitch line down here, we're going to stop in place on the previous one, move the template over, keeping it in line. When you're sewing across a quilt, your quilt will actually draw up, so the lines that we put in there in the first place won't be in exactly the same place. So we do need to make slight adjustments as we go when we're sewing. We're now ready to sew the next set of clamshells. With our foot, needle down and our foot in place, we're going to again line up this line across the tops of the clamshells. If we look here, we can see how it's shrunk as we've stitched. It brings it in. Our quilting stitches bring in our quilting. So when I get to the top here, I'm actually going to just stop and move my template across. I can't move my template when it's sitting in a ditch, but I can move my template across at the top of the shape. So I'm going to stop here. I'm just going to bring the template across just a tiny bit so that this line is in line with the one here. Keeping everything else in line, we're now going to continue sewing the clamshell. The extra stitch in the top won't be noticed, but we're keeping it in line, and that's what we want to be doing. So I'm going to look here and see that that's lining up okay there, so I can continue to the edge. When I get to the end of this one, I need to travel back up again. So I'm going to use a ruler again to give me a straight line to travel up against. You can freehand this if you've got a line to freehand against, a stitch line, or use a ruler, it's your choice. You might be close here, so I'm going to bring the template in, and having to come up here I have to go up a bit further, so I'm just going to freehand up a bit further here, and we're pretty close now. So again, I'm going to make sure that my template is in line with the stitches from before, and that the line across here runs across the top of each of those clamshells. I'm just going to come back a fraction, and away we go. Stop when you get to that stitch from the one before at the top of the clamshell, come round, come back, stop at that stitch with your foot down and needle down, move the template across, checking out that we're still in line. Our line is running across with the top again, and we're in line along the side. When we get to here, we're going to stop on the line. We're now just going to bring the template up again, keeping the tops in line with the ones we did before, and we're going to have to make a little bit of adjustment here when we get to the top again. So I'm back up the top, I'm just going to move that across. It really is only about one stitch that I'm moving across, but that one stitch does make a difference. Stop back on the top of the clamshell from before. Always check, make sure that you are in line. And we're back at the